All right, so we want to hear your story. Unvarnished, beginning to end.
Gotcha. Okay.
Is it okay now?
Okay. I'll try not to move so much.
No, please move as much as you want. Are we ready?
We're all set.
Okay, so do you feel frustrated that you've been in public life for 30 years, yet people feel that they don't know who you are, that you seem inauthentic?
I do feel like, what is this about? When people say I'm not authentic, what you see is what you get. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm not, brilliantly charismatic on TV, but I am the same person I've always been. And going through this gauntlet of unbelievable obstacles, you get scarred up a little bit.
What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter or will you cower? It's our time to take back the power. What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter or will you cower? It's our time to take back the power. We won't be pushed off to the side. What's your plan?
Please welcome to the stage Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Clinton set to launch her second bid for the presidency.
The goal is to get Hillary Clinton elected to be the 45th president of the United States.
She's the most recognizable female public figure.
It's time, the sense of destiny.
The problem is, of course, she is both one of the most admired and one of the most vilified women in American history.
Hillary is unlikable because she's unlikable.
She is just sort of a polarizing figure.
She hides things. That's her nature.
You hear about her, I don't know, there's something about her I just don't like. I don't know, there's something about her I just don't trust.
Almost since the moment Clinton burst on the national scene in 1992, she has set off a firestorm.
Either people feel extraordinarily passionately positive about her, or they absolutely do not like her and reject her.
What an honor. Hey, Hillary, Benghazi matters. You're incompetent.
Read the report.
I provoked strong opinions, positive and negative.
Hillary, take a hike.
I mean, I one time said to somebody who asked me, what do you want on your gravestone? I said, she's neither as good nor as bad as some people say about her. I didn't grow up as a little girl thinking, hey, I could be president. It never crossed my mind. I was born in the city of Chicago. When I was about 4, we moved to a suburb called Park Ridge. It was a classic post-World War II, Leave It to Beaver upbringing. When I was a little girl, I never knew a woman who worked outside the home, except for my teachers and the librarians at our library.
She's got a man she's promised to love, honor, and...
keep house for the right way.
Does that mean I never have to help with the dishes?
Never. Belle does my dishes. It's marvelous.
I had an incredible mother. She really was loving, encouraging. My father had been a chief petty officer in the Navy. He didn't know anything other than to set high expectations, and that even though I was a girl, he was going to expect me to do well. The neighborhood was pretty conservative. They were all Republicans. I remember one time playing pinochle with the grown-up men. We got into a big card fight. And I say to my father, I'm quitting and I'm leaving, and when I grow up, I'm gonna marry a Democrat. It was like, it was the worst thing I could think of to say to my father. And they were like, what? Yeah, my father said his prayers by the side of his bed every single night. Being a Methodist was a big part of my upbringing. Do all the good you can, to all the people you can for as long as you can. Then in 1961, we had a new youth minister show up, and his name was Reverend Don Jones. He was a real Methodist. I mean, he really had a mission. He thought everybody did, and that everybody was supposed to be striving to do all the good they could. Don's goal was to sort of force us to open our eyes to the world beyond our comfortable suburb. The civil rights movement was in full motion. I was seeing so much of what happened during the civil rights movement through the lens of the faith I was brought up in. I mean, how could you go to church on Sunday and hate people on Monday? I just could never figure that out. Our youth group had gone to hear Dr. King speak in downtown Chicago.
Because however much she strays away from it, the goal of America is freedom.
Dr. King's sermon was called Staying Awake Through the Revolution.
Our destiny is tied up in the destiny of America.
I'd never heard anything like that before. I mean, I'd never been to a sermon like that. I'd never heard a speaker like that.
We shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice.
I was so struck by it. It meant so much to me. I mean, I was beginning to wake up, to paraphrase Dr. King's sermon. The high school I went to was huge, probably 4,800, 5,000 people. A lot of the girls didn't want to make better grades than their boyfriends. They didn't want to make themselves unmarriageable by looking too smart, working too hard. I just couldn't be anything other than what I was.
Hillary was on student council in high school, and she ran for president. But you have to understand, no matter how many girls ran, it was always the boy who was going to win.
The boys basically said, no, no girl's going to be president. And then the boy who won, as soon as he won, he came to me and asked me to do all the work. He was going to be the president of the student council, but he wanted me to lead the organizations committee to do all of the work, which of course I said yes, because I was interested in the work. But that was, kind of the education about what was going on in the world. And it was one of the reasons why I decided to go to an all-girls college. I decided to go to Wellesley, and that was it. I was pretty intimidated through the first weeks. Felt very out of place. I didn't think I could do the work. I didn't think I belonged.
We were in the same dorm our freshman year. I have a pretty good sense of humor, and she had a great sense of humor. She did come from conservative Republican parents.
Friends of mine tended to be more liberal and progressive. They'd say, wow, can you believe that Hillary Rodham was for Goldwater?
I actually went to the Young Republicans meeting and, much to my surprise, was elected president of the Young Republicans. I held that position for maybe a month or two, and then I just decided, I don't think I believe that anymore. I've got to do my own due diligence to figure out where I stand politically.
I could see in constitutional law class, she felt very strongly about marginalized groups in American society and social reform. She was very, very pragmatic even then. Basically, her view was, how do you get from here to there?
Look, I consider myself a problem solver. I consider myself an idealist and an optimist, but you have to be willing to work in the system.
NBC News live coverage of the Democratic National Convention.
The summer of 1968, the Democratic Convention was in Chicago.
10,000 anti-war demonstrators gathered in Grant Park this afternoon.
Hillary called and she said, we really should go down because it was on TV. And here was our downtown park and all these things going on. We told our mothers we were going to the movies because there was no way they were going to let us go.
By the time we got to Grant Park, it was crazy. I mean, people were confronting the police. People 100 feet behind me would be throwing rocks. Who were they going to hit? They were going to hit other kids. I was never in the camp that thought violence was the answer to violence. I never believed that. I still to this day don't believe that.
But Hillary said, you know, we need to come back tomorrow night and really listen to what they were saying and what was going on.
The first reality is the necessity for peace in Vietnam and in the world.
For me, 1968 was just a watershed. I had, you know, young men who were friends of mine who were being drafted, and my then boyfriend was a conscientious objector. So I knew people who were putting their lives, their beliefs on the line. As fraught as times are right now, you just felt like, you know, the end of the world was right around the corner, and you had to do everything you could to hold it together. I started my senior year at Wellesley after that summer. I was by then the president of the college government. We were graduating, and some of my classmates and friends said, we've been talking and we don't think it's right that in this time of turmoil and change, we don't have a student speaker, and we think you should speak.
You know, I don't think there was any vote or process. People just said, well, Hillary, of course. Should be Hillary Rodham.
And so we rallied for that, and it was agreed by the administration, who I think didn't entirely realize what they were getting.
The main speaker was Senator Edward Brooke, the Republican senator from Massachusetts.
There is a narrow but distinct line between productive dissent and counterproductive disruption.
Senator Brooke made some comments that were a little condescending, a little bit, you know, now you girls, you know, you little girls.
The distinction...
It was a message of all is well, the system works. It was also, though, a message upsetly of your place as wives and mothers.
I was very upset. I wanted to counter the picture that Senator Brooke was painting.
Hillary got up and instead of starting off with her speech, which, I mean, she had it written, it was in front of her, she just started talking.
What I'm speaking for today is all of us. And I find myself reacting just briefly to some of the things that Senator Brooke said.
I was first startled because I thought I knew what the opening lines were going to be. And I went, whoa, we're off script here.
We feel that for too long, our leaders have viewed politics as the art of the possible. And the challenge now is to practice politics as the art of making what appears to be impossible possible.
I really got chills. I thought, no, we're not going to wait. What's happening in this country is urgent. It's at a turning point.
Every protest, every dissent is unabashedly an attempt to forge an identity in this particular age.
You can't discount us simply because of our youth or because we're women.
You know, we gave her a standing ovation. I mean, we were just like, yeah, you know, she really spoke for us.
That speech got picked up by the Boston Globe, and then it got picked up from there, and it just cascaded.
She was featured in the next week's Life magazine, one of the 3 college seniors picked out as speaking for their generation. That was her first brush with notoriety or fame.
I think she did have the sense that she was preparing herself to do very significant work.
I never thought about going into politics, but I was intrigued by people like Gene McCarthy and Bobby Kennedy, who were trying to get laws changed and really, from the top down, promote social and political change. I decided that maybe I should go to law school. So I went with a few of my friends from Wellesley to take the entrance exam, what's called LSAT. We went to this enormous lecture hall at Harvard, which is where it was being administered. And there were not many women. That was sort of our small group and a few other scattered women, and it was hundreds of men. And we sit down waiting for the test to start. And, these guys start harassing us, basically saying, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. You can't go to law school. Or my favorite, if you get into law school and take my place and I get sent to Vietnam and die, it's your fault. In those days, you got no points for being emotional. You'd get no points for trying to fight back or defend yourself. You just put your head down, you worked hard, you got to where you were going despite whatever obstacles were put up. And when you train yourself like that, and then you move fast forward into an age where everybody wants to see what your emotions are and how you respond and all that, it's really a different environment in which we find ourselves now.
You have some money? Because I don't have my purse. Great. Okay, great. Hello! Let's see. Hey, nice to see you. How's business? Not too bad? Good. Yeah, I just did a big thing on small business, so I'm really focused on what we can do to make it even better. I will. I want to be a small business president, so I am.
When I started campaigning in 2015, I could see that so many people felt left out, left behind in the economy and disgusted with the inequality. And I thought I was best prepared to deal with it. I thought I could get things done.
Hello. How you doing? I've met so many people who come up to me and they say, drug prices are going up astronomically.
They are, and fewer are being covered by
Fewer being covered.
In the beginning of the race, Hillary Clinton made this concerted effort to listen to voters and hear what they needed to talk about and hear what they needed changed. And then, emails blew it all up, right?
Pressure is mounting on Hillary Clinton to say more about why she opted to use a private email account as opposed to government email for her official business as Secretary of State.
The email story broke in March of 2015. New York Times, that she's had a private server.
It comes up in the context of the Benghazi investigation, and the committee in the House, the Republican committee in the House, discovers that there are these emails that hadn't been on the government server, and that she had been using this personal email server the entire time.
Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is facing questions about why she never had a government email.
She used a private email throughout her entire time as Secretary of State.
State Department said today that Clinton's use of a personal email account was not illegal.
It's very hard to explain this story well. People didn't quite get it. The rules are arcane, All they got was she did something wrong.
The Associated Press reported Clinton's personal email account was linked to a server registered to her home in Chappaqua, New York.
When I became Secretary of State, I decided to use the server that had been set up for Bill and his sort of former president's office. I did it as a matter of convenience. There was no regulation against it. There was nothing against it. And everybody knew I was doing it because they were all emailing me. And I was emailing them. And that was hundreds and hundreds of people in the government.
She would point out that Colin Powell also used a private email. So she did what previous Secretary of States did. Of course, their names weren't Hillary Clinton, and they weren't running for president.
Secretary Clinton. I'd be happy to have somebody talk to you about the rules. I fully complied with every rule that I was governed by.
We had a press conference because I thought it would be like a 2-day story. Okay, here are the facts. And so let's move on and talk about the future of our country.
Why did you delete the first one? Because they were personal and private.
She had all different kinds of emails. She had personal emails, and then she had work emails. They read the law. What the law said was anything work-related, you have to turn over. So you divide those things in two. You've got your work emails here, and then you've got emails about yoga and Chelsea's wedding and other things that are probably pretty private. She had friends who had cancer. She had, who knows? It's her email, right? I'm sure she was having private conversations. So if you're Hillary Clinton, you no longer use that email server, and you've fulfilled your responsibilities legally. What do you do with these other emails? she deleted them.
I was wondering if you think that you made a mistake in the response to the controversy around it.
Part of what I hoped to see Hillary say was just, of course I didn't want you people reading through my emails. You know, look at what you put us through in the 90s. But she never actually said that. There was always a lot of triangulating and a lot of legalese about how this was allowed at the time.
Hillary Clinton today ignored questions about calls for the FBI to investigate the handling of classified information on the private email account she used as Secretary of State.
The concern was that classified information, you know, U.S. government secrets, ended up on this server outside of the main system.
Suddenly you have a presidential candidate who is under FBI investigation at the time of the campaign, which is a pretty extraordinary thing.
The central question here is trust.
It seems like the Clintons are always kind of trying to create their own rules or little carve-outs.
I have a hard time believing that it was just that innocent.
It tapped into this sort of underlying question that certainly Hillary Clinton's detractors had. Why doesn't she think she has to follow the same procedures that other people do? Or what are the Clintons really doing? These sort of long-term storylines that existed before the presidential campaign and required a very quick and forthright response.
You were in charge of it. You were the official in charge. Did you wipe the server?
What, like with a cloth or something? Well, no. We have turned over the server. They can do whatever they want to with the server to figure out what's there, what's not there. That's for the, people investigating it to try to figure out. Thank you all. Thank you all very much.
Is this an indication that this issue isn't going to go away for the remainder of your campaign?
Nobody talks to me about it, other than you guys. Look, I did get my hackles up with some of the questions that came my way. I take the responsibility. That's clearly my job to figure out how to better handle it, which I never successfully did.
We did decide, all right, let's do a round of interviews to try to clear the decks.
Well, just say that what you did was, a mistake. It was dumb. It's over, and that'll end it. I did not believe that. I wasn't convinced of that, but I understood the frustration of my campaign. So against my better judgment, I said, okay, fine.
And good day, I'm Andrea Mitchell in New York, where I sat down with Hillary Clinton just a few moments ago. First of all, are you sorry? Do you want to apologize to the American people for the choice you made?
Well, it wasn't the best choice, and I certainly have said that. I will continue to say that.
Andrea said, well, do you think you should apologize? And Hillary just kind of we were all sort of taken back, apologize to who? For what? But my heart just sank because I was I knew as soon as an apology is on the table, it's going to be day 3. Where's the Clinton apology?
The fact that the first words out of her mouth are not, I'm really sorry about this.
She's saying she's not going to apologize?
Back in the headlines once again, she says that she does not need to apologize.
Once I was on the table, I was you got to do it. You got to apologize. We got to move on. We got to get past this. So a couple days later, we did an interview with David Muir from ABC.
And so as you sit here, millions watching tonight, did you make a mistake?
I did. As I said, it was allowed. But I'm sorry that it has, raised all of these questions. Okay, so it was a mistake. Shouldn't have done it. And that's fine. It turned out to be a mistake because look at all the oxygen it was sucking out of my campaign. It didn't end it. It didn't end it at all. And it never ended. It never ended. When we get knocked around, we have to pull ourselves together and stand up straight and keep walking forward. Eventually everybody's going to say, wait a minute. The American electorate is savvy. We sort out all of these different claims and accusations, and we then decide what kind of future we're willing to bet on by who we vote for.
There was this stereotype manufactured years ago, and that became the myth. And about her being cold and calculating, and how could anyone love her? They dehumanized her. She's always been very good at compartmentalizing her feelings. I know there were times that it got her down, but that also motivated her to keep pushing on. I can beat them at their own game, because she did many times.
In 1969, I got into Yale Law School. I was one of 27 women, and that was the most that they'd ever had. There were huge changes taking place, and the so-called baby boomer generation of women were the shock troops.
There was Ladies' Day at Yale Law School where, all of a sudden the professor would only call on women. It was a ceremony that made it clear you're bizarre and this is a day that you're going to be called on. And we protested it. And Hillary confronted that.
She was someone who spoke up in class. She was impressive. I remember I introduced her to my then boyfriend, and we came back from dinner and he said, "Wow, she's scary." And I said, "Good, you're right to be afraid of her." And he said, "Really?" I said, "You should be afraid of all of us."
During the 60s, with so much change in society, in addition to the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement, the women's movement began to develop.
We proclaim and we talk about equal opportunities in employment and in education. We are going to have it now.
In the early 70s, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was bringing her cases to open up jobs, to demand equality. There were new voices like Gloria Steinem and people who just burst onto the scene.
It's very challenging for a woman to admit she's smart in this society and to admit she has ambition.
A new kind of frame of mind, sweet and sour, hands in the fist, a new kind of womanhood.
Well, women, of course, are delightful persons. And I hear a strange and strident voice. That's the braless bubblehead, I call that person, who speaks about the freedom, and the right of unabridged abortion, as it were. It doesn't speak for women.
There was no question that Hillary and I were part of the second wave of feminism. There was no way to be in Yale Law School at that time and not be. There are certain things we take for granted now about women. Women trial lawyers, women politicians, women professors. There were none. We were looking around and we were saying, isn't it amazing we can be that? It really has to be said, we were not talking about becoming president of the United States. I hear the press now talk about, she calculated from law school. In 1968, the notion that we would have a meaningful job that would match our intellect was all we were talking about.
Hillary, she had a focus. Children, families, early education, those kinds of issues.
I really wanted to be an advocate for children, mostly because of what happened to my own mother. She had a pretty miserable childhood, neglected by her young parents. She never felt part of a family. She never felt like she was wanted. She left home at 13 and went to work as a housekeeper. I really felt like I had to do more to help people, especially children, like my own mother.
It was unusual at the Yale Law School to be interested in family law. This wasn't a serious subject. So that was already a courageous choice. I'm a feminist and I'm going to do women and children's rights issues. It's interesting, I didn't want to go into that because I thought that was too feminine. And so in some sense, she was doing something much more radical than I was doing. During the summer, Hillary started working for Marian Wright Edelman.
I wish that senators would have a chance to go and just look at the empty cupboards in the Delta and the number of people who are going around begging just to feed their children.
She had a reputation as a real groundbreaker, advocating for neglected kids and migrant kids and, kids who were generally left behind.
I met her when we were just beginning the Children's Defense Fund, and she clearly cared about children. It was not right that children were not able to go to school, did not have health care, did not have permanent families. And this was something that offended her faith beliefs, I think, but also just her sense of fair play.
I wrote a story about this summer when she went undercover as working for the Children's Defense Fund and went to a school in Dothan, Alabama, to investigate school segregation. She pretended to be a wife and mother new to town who wanted to enroll her child in the school, and she sort of went through this role playing with the administrator and then said, there's not going to be any black kids in this school. And he was like, wink, wink, no. And then she went back to Washington and filed this report on it. It was the 70s, so it was still somewhat dangerous to be a single woman in the South poking around.
I was really young and filled with my sense of self-righteousness about what we were doing. I went a lot of places and did a lot of things that, looking back on, I would be worried if, some young woman today did some of that. But I never really stopped to think about it. I just did.
I had done 2 years at Oxford. Wanted to go to Yale because it had a reputation of merging law and policy, public policy more. I took a class called Political and Civil Rights, and I saw Hillary sitting there. And I don't know, there was just something, she had a certain aura about her. I thought, boy, there's somebody who's special. I knew nothing about her. And I had just broken up with a woman I was going with, and I didn't really want to, I just wanted to wander around for a while and not be involved. But anyway, I just found her magnetic. So I went up and I got very close to her, and I couldn't bring myself to touch her on the shoulder. I just had this feeling that this is not going to be normal and this could change your life, and I don't know about this. I'll never forget it. That's the first time I saw her.
One day I was up in the library and he was watching me, and I could tell he was watching me.
And she closed her law book, walked all the way to where I was standing.
And I said, if you're going to keep looking at me and I'm going to keep looking back, we ought to know each other's names. I'm Hillary Rodham. Who are you?
She was different than anybody I ever met. And the more time I spent with her, the better I liked her. It wasn't complicated.
We were serious almost from the beginning. Bill was just, for me, in a different universe, a different, level of connection. He was so incredibly charismatic, filled with positive energy, really smart. I just felt like he was the most interesting man I'd ever met and probably ever would meet, and that I would never have a dull or boring moment, and that has proven to be true.
My mother didn't know what to make of her. Mother met her when we were in law school.
I can't say it was the most successful meeting. She was a force of nature, but we were not exactly on the same wavelength. I wore glasses, and I wasn't exactly a pageant beauty and all the rest of it.
There was a race in our group to how many beauty conventions you could ignore, from shaving your legs to going braless. The law students were each grubbier than the next. It was sort of a race to grubbiness.
Hillary was all nervous about meeting my mother. So, and she went out, did a stupid thing. She kind of chopped her hair off a little shorter, and it was all kind of ratty looking. And she had these big Coke bottle glasses. She wasn't wearing contacts yet. And my mother was used to me going out with women in Arkansas who at least wore makeup, And I said, Mother, she's more like you than you think. And I said, you're both tough as nails and you'll be fine. And she's a really good person. Just relax.
We both graduated in June of 1973. Bill wanted to take me to Europe. I'd never been to Europe. We got a car and we traveled all over England and Wales. And we were up in the Lake Country, and that's when he proposed to me for the first time.
I'd halfway done it once before. I said, I really want to marry you. I never thought I would be married. I thought there's a good chance I'd spend my life alone. Because I had a complicated childhood, and I worried about it. But I said, I really want to marry you, but you shouldn't marry me. And she said, that's not a very good sales pitch. And I said, well, you shouldn't, because I have to go home to Arkansas. I love the place. I want to spend my life there. I want to be in politics, if I can. And if I can, I want to live there. And I won't be me if I don't do it.
You know, I certainly loved him, and I loved being with him, but I just didn't know what I was going to do. So I just needed more time, and that's what I told him. He said, okay. He said, you know, I'll wait.
So we graduated from law school. She went to Washington, and I went home.
What happened at Watergate set off a series of political scandals, the likes of which this country never before has known.
What did the president know, and when did he know it?
In '74, as Watergate unspooled and things started moving towards impeachment, the House committee was putting together the investigation and needed smart young things. Among them, Hillary.
Mr. Chairman, the first matter that I would like to report to the committee on this morning is the progress of the investigation.
I don't think I could have asked for a more intense educational immersion experience in being a young lawyer. I worked on a memo about what the grounds for impeachment were. I had to really dive into very old text to figure out what high crimes and misdemeanors meant. When those facts that had been vetted and proven were finally presented,
27 members have voted aye.
even Republicans were convinced that President Nixon had violated terms covered by high crimes and misdemeanors.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
What I saw firsthand was a process that worked the way it was supposed to work. But when it was over and there was no further role for us, then I had to decide what I did next.
I went to visit her. We had a wonderful time, and I met all these people that she worked with. But in terms of our life together, I said, you're the most gifted person that I know. And you should go home to Illinois and run for office, or move to New York or someplace else where you can run for office. And she just laughed at me. She said, are you kidding? Nobody'd ever vote for me. Who would vote for a pushy woman like me?
Madam Secretary, I've got Nikki on the phone, but I've got a short leash.
I know, Nick. When I was press secretary, I never made her get out of her chair. I figured it out.
Really, you know, seriously, I was just in a giant.
Perfect timing. Well done, Nick.
Hello? Oh, that is so great, Nikki. Wow, 75%. Wow, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. 75%.
Hey. Picked up 13 points from this morning, that means, right?
Yeah, good.
Hello, everybody. Hello. This is where we come in.
Great.
I'll begin and then.
Okay, great.
I have to say, this is a little surreal.
Yeah,
But
for
I'm
me
gonna-
too.
I'm going to push through it.
I mean, you know, you do me better than I do me.
Hi, I'm Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Great name. I'm Val.
Oh, Val, I'm just so darn bummed. All anyone wants to talk about is Donald Trump.
Donald Trump? Is he the one that's like,
You're all losers.
That is him indeed. Oh, fuck, that's good.
Thank you for saving the world.
Thanks so much. That's it.
Thanks, guys. Yes.
Hi, I really wanted to ask about your political views for Bernie Sanders.
My political views?
Bernie Sanders!
He's a self-described Democratic socialist from Vermont, taking on the biggest frontrunner the Democratic Party has ever seen.
Enough is enough!
Hillary Clinton is feeling the burn.
I do remember Robbie Moog, who was our campaign manager, who's from Vermont, by the way, Bernie Sanders' home state, who said very early on, do not underestimate this guy. He may look like an old man who's like standing in the corner of the dinner party ranting about God knows what, but do not underestimate him.
I felt very aware of how powerful he was as a messenger. He had been saying the same stuff for 20 years.
We are the 99%, and it's time we took power away from the 1%.
Hillary Clinton was, by comparison with Bernie Sanders, seen as a centrist, seen as the establishment, seen as an old school Democrat.
I'm not oblivious to the pain and the frustration that people feel about our political system, our economy, our government. And it's very personal to me because every other generation of Americans, when asked, do you think things will be better? They've always said yes.
He wins, we lose.
Oh, I know, the Bernie people came to say that. We're very sorry you're leaving. As they're leaving, I want to say, look, you may not be supporting me, but I'm supporting you. I will work for you. I will fight for you.
Oh, man. Yeah. This is the strangest election. It's so strange. Turmoil and disillusionment, and discouragement, and anger, and all of that. We got to figure out what it actually means in order to deal with it better, don't you think?
Well, one thing is, it took a while for people to see the Tea Party phenomenon on the right emerge into something hard. I worry that there's an underlying vitriol with some percentage of Bernie supporters.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
We might have our own coalescing lefty, angry.
But you know, think about it. There is a level of vitriol. There's some similarities back to but this is different.
Because it was people were buying a kind of story about optimism fundamentally.
Yes. That's a very good point. Very good point.
In many ways, the opposite of that.
Yes.
What's funny is they're still buying the same underlying notion that Washington can be changed dramatically overnight. But theirs is a tear it down rather than bring it all together.
Yeah, well, to be continued. Thanks.
And yes, every public college and university in America will be tuition free.
I see Bernie Sanders, he's saying to the young people, I'm going to be able to send you to school for free.
I think I have a better plan, actually, to make college affordable on the front end. I support debt-free tuition. Nobody should have to borrow money to pay tuition. And then we're going to make it possible to refinance their debt, to get it down much lower, to move into a contingency repayment plan.
People's greatest strength is usually their greatest weakness, too. Hillary Clinton's greatest strength was that she knew this policy stuff back and forth, and she was enormously effective at getting things done. And so when someone says to her, how do we bring down college debt? Immediately, this complicated calculus formula is going in her head, thinking through all the different types of funding streams that could go into that, all the different pieces of the bureaucracy that would be responsible for managing that, and she comes out with a policy that she believes she can go get done. That is absolutely her superpower. In a campaign, it is her greatest weakness, because voters need clear, clean, definitive answers on things. That moves faster today. That's what will get trafficked on social media now.
You know, I had people in my campaign say, just say free college. You know, that's what Bernie's saying. Go out and say free college. And you know, this poll says that millennials love the idea of free college. I'm saying, no, I'm not going to do that. I think you should level with people, even if you're not playing into their emotions. And you know, that makes me a less than ideal politician. I really understand that. I mean, I'm a really good public official. I really do a good job, but I do suffer from the responsibility, Jean. I've said that for years because I don't like to say something that I know is not true. I don't like to say something that I'm going to do that I know is not doable. That is just anathema to me.
HRC! 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 And I told you about the cards and then the photo. Those are the only fun little things. Did you get your cut? That's good. The bangs.
Oh, I love what Isabel did. I love my
Your
little
hair does look great. I am getting my roots done tomorrow, lady.
Yeah. But it takes a certain amount of time.
Are you wearing those shoes on stage? Are they? I'm sorry.
No, I mean, honest to God, do you think anybody talked to Bernie Sanders about goddamn shoes? I don't think so.
Those might be a little high for your.
All right, everybody, behave.
Okay, no more snarky comments, people.
No, I'm not saying it.
I was trying to girls, you look beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
I did. Ask Barbara. I did.
Former Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton. All right, I want to introduce you to somebody. This is you on your wedding day.
Oh, yeah.
It's October 11, 1975. If you both had those haircuts right now, you would be so hip it hurt.
Yeah, I know. That was our wedding day. Oh, my gosh. It was great. I followed my heart to Arkansas. I really did. You know, Bill was in Arkansas, and I thought I had to explore, you know, what this relationship meant to me.
I had this little place out in the country outside Fayetteville. It was a little bitty, tiny place. I remember she was visiting me. I was teaching in the law school, and the people at the law school were much more impressed with her than me. And so they offered her a job. And she, on a flying leap, took it.
So I said, well, I'm going to go teach at the law school and see what I feel like living there.
I thought she was crazy to move to Arkansas to be with him. I understand she fell in love with him, but everyone else was negotiating where to go, where their careers could be equal.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing this. Oh, you don't know anybody there. I said, well, I know Bill, and I'll meet other people.
Could you maybe give it a year or two? I thought she had so much promise herself, and clearly the world was her oyster. I mean, she had so many opportunities.
It was a big decision.
It was a very big decision, and that's why a lot of my friends were both surprised by it and not certain about it. But I also really loved Bill, and I really thought that I had to make a decision. He was clearly attached to a place that meant the world to him.
For most of her people going to Arkansas, she might as well have been going to Tasmania or something, you know, just the other side of the world.
I arrived in Fayetteville, found out I was going to be teaching criminal law and criminal procedure, running the legal aid program, running the prison project program. I had a big set of assignments.
We were both teaching and having a good time. And one day we passed this house. It was a pretty little place and it was for sale. And she said, "That's a pretty house." I said, "Yeah, it really is."
All I said was, "That's a really cute house." That's all I said.
I bought the house. And then I went out and furnished it.
He was so proud of it. He said, "Well, now you have to marry me because we now have a house."
I said, "You can't let me undertake this grown-up investment and move into this house all by myself." And she just laughed. She said, "Yeah, I guess I will." And so she finally said, yes. We had a very small wedding with our friends, and a Methodist minister performed the ceremony in the living room of our home. I think we felt a deep need for each other. We were off to the races.
Bill Clinton for Attorney General.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've worked hard to excel as a lawyer and teacher and to acquire the habits of discipline necessary to be a good Attorney General. And I hope you'll help me in the election.
Bill gets elected Attorney General. We're going to move to Little Rock. He's making $18,000 a year, something like that. Didn't matter to him. He could have cared less. I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I have to go practice law for both financial reasons, but also because I wanted to get out there and do it.
She got a job at the Rose Law Firm, which was the oldest law firm west of Mississippi. And I'm not sure they knew what to make of her either, but they wanted her.
She was the first woman lawyer at the firm, then ultimately became a partner. It didn't come easily. It took a lot of proving herself. She worked very, very hard.
When I was going to court as a young lawyer, it was a spectacle. These good old boys would, say, oh my gosh, it was like the talking dog. Look at this, she not only can talk, she can stand on her hind legs and clap her front paws. I mean, it was so unique. I remember one trial, the judge says, wow, Miss Rodham, you just look so pretty. Stand up there and show us how pretty you look today. Just turn around for me. And, my eyes are rolling.
When she came to the Bar Association, there were a lot of people that, there were judges who didn't want her. They didn't think women should be lawyers to begin with. And so I tried to introduce her to people that I knew, women who were in town that I thought she would be interested in getting to know. We would talk about women's rights, and we talked about just a lot of things.
I had great friends and friends who were university professors, physicians. There was like a growing circle of women who were, pushing through. Now, we still were dealing with a lot of the attitudes.
The Equal Rights Amendment is a fraud.
This is the way they have built support for ERA, by telling women that they are mistreated, that the home is a prison.
Phyllis Schlafly was out there running around the country basically saying women should stay in the home. A woman who never was at her home, but nevertheless, a woman who was saying you should stay in your home.
You can do it. You can turn back this tide all across the country.
And so we were in real time living a lot of this conflict. It was like Goldilocks. Well, be strong, but not too strong. Be assertive, but not too assertive. All the stuff we live with today.
At this point, ABC News has projected that the youngest governor in the United States now will be...
Can you hear me?
Young Governor Clinton of the state of Arkansas.
The 40th elected governor of Arkansas making his way down the aisle of the State House of...
I became governor after just 2 years as Attorney General. I was just 32 years old. I said, oh God, I got all this responsibility and I've got to do this.
He now is expected to attract national attention as a handsome, articulate future candidate for president, though he won't even be old enough for that job for 3 years.
And Frank, we have with us the lady who will be the First Lady of Arkansas, Hillary Rodham. Hillary, we know that you are an attorney. What kind of plans have you made to be First Lady of Arkansas?
Well, we've spent a lot of time talking about the kinds of work that we want to do. And I intend to continue practicing law because I think that it's important that I both stay in touch with people other than through political life, so that I see people in contexts other than at receptions like this, or people being nice to me and asking me questions on TV. And I think it's also something I want to do because I've worked hard to attain these skills.
Hillary Rodham, soon to be the First Lady of Arkansas. Back to you, Randy.
Hillary, to my knowledge, was the first Lady of the state of Arkansas who had a full-time job outside of being First Lady. Of course, that was curious to a lot of people, like, how's this going to work?
Today we focus on Hillary Rodham, Arkansas's new First Lady. The thought occurs to me that you really don't fit the image that we have created for the governor's wife in Arkansas. You're not a native. You've been educated in liberal Eastern universities. You're less than 40. You don't have any children. You don't use your husband's name. You practice law. Does it concern you that maybe other people feel that you don't fit the image that we have created for the governor's wife in Arkansas?
No, that doesn't bother me. And I hope that it doesn't bother very many people.
Hillary encountered opposition to everything at every turn. Her hair and her makeup and her not having children initially and her having a job. It was every battle that we had fought at Yale abstractly, she was actually fighting.
I mean, of course there were tough days and ridiculous kinds of attacks. I mean, yeah, of course. But, I would shake it off. I mean, I just had to get through it. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't painful and annoying and outraging, because it was all of that.
I should think you must get very tired of being asked questions about your decision not to use your husband's name.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't get tired of it. I think it's an understandable question.
In Arkansas, you just don't keep your own name. That was talked about. Anything that she did that was out of the ordinary, the same group, it just expanded. And that's before Facebook.
I remember talking to a guy who was a lawyer in South Arkansas about this, who's pretty liberal on everything else, and great on civil rights and everything. He said, I know you, you're a real man. This has got to be eating you alive. I said, Don, I never think about it unless somebody asks me. He said, I just don't believe you. And, I began to see, in a way I had been, frankly, tone deaf to. Because I grew up in a family where we liked smart women, and it was a different deal.
Looking back now, people go, well, who cares? I mean, that's not a big deal. But, in 1979, 1980, people did care.
We now have a clarification in the state of Arkansas, a stunning upset over the incumbent Democrat Bill Clinton.
And then he lost in 1980 for a number of other reasons, but that was certainly, in the list that people would put forth.
Hillary and I have shed a few tears for our loss of last evening, but we accept the will of our people with humility.
The loss was really hard. But in a funny way, I got over it quicker because I had something to live for. I had Hillary, and Chelsea was born in 1980.
I had trouble getting pregnant in the beginning and, a few little scares along the way, but everything worked out. We were totally over the moon, happy parents.
I always desperately wanted to be a father. I think more desperately than most people because my father died before I was born and I never got to know him.
I didn't really know much about little babies, but from the moment I met Chelsea, I was madly, deeply, forever in love.
This is so hard. Here you are, a political wife, and you're trying to figure out what to say to the television cameras.
I thought I might have a chance to run for governor again. And I told Hillary, and I said, I think we can do this. She said, I think you can too. And she was all for it.
He's told me that he's very close to making his decision public, yes.
When he decided to run again, people were urging me to change my name, that this was so distressing to people.
I've not wanted to upset anybody. I really thought I was doing it for the right reason. So I'm thinking of perhaps changing my name to, I don't know, Martha Washington or something. I really...
she felt some responsibility for his loss. So she then said, okay, if my name is a big issue, I will take his name.
Hi, ladies. I'm Hillary Clinton. Hope to be able to support my husband. Got me out here working in the sun. Yeah.
She said, I don't want to be responsible for one lost vote. It's too important for the future of the state. We've got to win this race. And it's funny, I think it was almost like it relieved people that she gave them something, It made her concern for them more real.
I spent a lot of time on the campaign trail, a lot of time traveling with him. And then I had some friends saying, well, I've got ideas about your hair and ideas about your clothes. my eye doctor said, oh, we've got these new contact lenses, you should try them. It was like, okay, I can, shift a little bit toward a more expected appearance.
It appears that we have won.
Bill Clinton making a comeback at the age of 36.
Believe me when I tell you that I am overwhelmed by this, and I will try always to be worthy of it. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Most people would go out of their way to avoid a moving day at a household, but the new First Lady said this time was a lot easier. This time she knew what to expect. In between boxes and plants, there was modeling to do, giving reporters a glimpse of the inaugural gown she'll wear to ceremonies that more than 5,000 are expected to attend.
Here comes my daughter. Here's your reporter friend.
Hillary Rodham Clinton wants Arkansans to concentrate now, not on her image, but what she can contribute to bringing the state together.
When I ran for re-election, I promised to support a sweeping reform of the education system because we were way behind.
Second worst in the nation. And thank God for Mississippi, because Mississippi was always worse than we were.
We will rewrite the school standards to redefine the minimum educational requirements we think every boy and girl in this state is entitled to. And I have decided to name my wife, Hillary, as chairman of that commission.
He put me in charge of reforming the state's public education system.
We know it's a huge task, but we're very optimistic that we're going to be able to make a substantial improvement in what our students receive.
Tonight is the opportunity to tell us what your ideas are about education.
She had a great diverse committee. They had hearings in every county of the state, all 75 counties.
We had to convince the public that we're going to make all these reforms and you're going to pay for it. We're going to raise your taxes and you're going to pay for it. And they did that. Try that today.
Well, we're very glad you could make it.
I'm delighted.
Hillary Clinton's stature has risen to the point where she is regarded throughout the state as a kind of modern-day folk hero.
The road to being somebody in this society starts with education. And we intend to be sure that every child in this state is somebody, so that they can play a role in this country to make it the kind of place it needs to be.
Well, I have to say, after seeing how at ease you are at that podium and saying those important things and addressing those important issues, would you run for office, Hillary?
I don't think so, Pat. I love being involved in politics, and I love what we can do to try to help people. But I don't see the possibility myself of running for office, but I want to stay involved and work as hard as I can.
You're not going to say never, though, are you?
I never say never.
I didn't think so. But we'll be back in a minute to find out much of what Hillary says about her public and private life.
I know you don't want to go as long today. Maybe just one more.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how.
Okay.
I mean, I'm
there's
actually
so much.
There's so much.
I know.
So much to talk about. I don't know.
The scandals, the investigations.
Like, I am the most investigated innocent person in America, and they just, they are just. See, that's why this is not just politics. It's deep cultural stuff. And anyway, I do want to talk to you about all of that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Anyway.
All right.
Clunk, clunk. Here we go. I want to push the envelope as far as we can push it.
We ought to give women the support they need and be full functioning citizens.
She is both one of the most admired and one of the most vilified women in American history.
As long as she has been in public life, there have been these ups and downs.
People still believe wacky things about me. I kill people, I rob people.
This is all the recipe for years of painful controversy.
He sat on the side of the bed and he said, I have to tell you something. There's a story that's going to be in the newspaper.
She said, well, you have to go tell your daughter. That's worse than me.
I felt compelled to get up and keep going.
She was at the tip of the spear.
Now, she's got bad temper. She could be crazy.
His agenda is other people's agenda.
Bernie just drove me crazy. It was all just baloney. There's not going to be any October surprises.
This campaign's done.
The whole thing just blew up.
What just happened?